good evening. It is Tuesday evening, and we are getting towards the very end of our. I'm sorry, it's actually Wednesday, isn't it? Good. Uh, it's been a long week.
It
We're
has.
getting towards the end of our one on one interviews with candidates in the Democratic primary in June, and tonight we have with us Mayor Justin Wilson. I will remind you that the Zebra Press and ZTV do not endorse any particular candidate, but rather offer this as a public service. So, welcome. It's delightful to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having
Good,
me.
good. I love having people in studio. It just
Yeah.
it makes it a little.
It's good to be back with people again.
Yes, it is.
It's
It
wonderful.
is. Shaking hands and everything.
That's right.
So, two quick questions, and then we'll kind of just plunge in because we
Sure.
have a lot to talk about tonight.
Sure.
What is something that most people would be surprised to know about you?
I've been through 6 campaigns now in the city, so I feel like
You
at this
thi- you
I
think
feel like
it's
at this
all out
point
there?
people know almost everything. I think my family sometimes gets frustrated by how many
Yes.
things people know about us. I don't know. Like, let's see. A lot of people know I'm a runner,
Right.
and I've been a runner for a while, and that's certainly something I enjoy in my free time.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
kind of music makes you get up on the dance floor?
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. I was
Okay,
going to
all
go
right,
there. So,
all right.
some people know this, but I'm a big fan of 90s hip hop. So, so that
okay.
tends to be that's what I grew up with, and so that tends to be what I enjoy. So, that's sometimes surprising to people. So,
Yeah, that's all right then. And what is your guilty food pleasure?
oh God. Guilty food pleasure. Really obnoxious candy. Not
okay.
chocolate, but like the sugar, like Sour Patch Kids.
And what is
the,
your guilty
the,
food pleasure?
the,
Sorry about that.
the Smarties,
Okay.
Sweet Tarts,
The
all
junky
all
stuff.
the junky stuff. Yeah, that
Okay.
tends to be the
All right.
stuff that I eat. So
All right.
There you
That's well, everybody has to have something. All right. So when you took office in 2019,
yeah.
I'm sure that you had a vision and a plan.
Yeah.
And you had about 4 months to work on that?
Well, what's funny is we came in this council in January of 19, knowing that we were going to be facing a crisis. The crisis we were facing was the metro shutdown.
Okay.
That was the crisis. And we had spent, the previous council had spent months planning. This current council picked that up in January and started a really intensive planning process, working with the community, working with our business community.
You're talking about the shutdown because of the metro.
Yeah, to try to
because of the
figure out how we were
repairs.
going to deal with this
Okay.
incredible crisis of
Okay.
having all of our metro stations closed for an
Okay.
entire summer. And so we were on a crisis footing, but a far less significant crisis than ultimately we ended up facing. And so we got through that. I think we got through that through incredible community partnerships, a lot of planning, a lot of versatility on the part of our businesses and our residents. And then we were handed this, and obviously, looking back, I mean, I even look back at sometimes. It's now, we're over a year since this all got started, and so Facebook shows me regularly some of these old posts from a year ago, and it seems so quaint, because
It does.
back then, I think we thought this was going to be a couple weeks, maybe a month or two, and if you had told me at that point that we'd be sitting here in May of 2021. And just now starting to have real hope and being able to get out of this and get back to normal, or as normal as we will get, I would have been, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I mean, and so I don't think anybody could have imagined what we would be facing. But we have made it to the other side, and we have made it to the other side because we have an incredible community that has, from the very beginning, found ways to step up. Thousands of volunteers. I mean, it's been stunning, the number of people who constantly
Yes.
email me, tweet at me, Facebook. Hey, how can I help? I want to help on this. I want to help on that. And even now, as the folks are continuing to get vaccinated, folks who will write me and say, I just got vaccinated. Now I want to help. I couldn't help before because I didn't feel safe, but now what can I do? What can I do? Where can I go? Where can I be? And I think it just speaks to this community. And then we had so much foundation and in place on the public health side, in the city government, in our public safety agencies, that we're just not planning for this, obviously, but planning for something, planning for a crisis, and I think those folks stepped up in a way.
I actually, when I went to get my shot, my second one, I actually said something to the person there about how efficient everything had been, and that's what she said to me. She said, we train not necessarily for COVID, but we train for this kind of crisis all the time,
Absolutely.
which was actually reassuring. And but back to your point, I think it's actually a good thing that we didn't know it was going to last this long.
Yeah.
Because
I think you're right.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, I think for the community's collective mental health, I don't think it would have been.
Absolutely.
But you're exactly right. I mean, I think we for years we've been doing these flu shot clinics, and obviously they're helpful because they get 1,000 or 2,000 people vaccinated from the flu. But that's not really the reason we do it. We do it for exactly the purpose you're saying, to help plan, to practice, to see how this would work. And you think about it, right? Every year we would do 2 flu shot clinics,
right?
1,000 people each day, and we were like, wow, that's a big deal. And and now we've had days where we've nearly done 2,000 people,
Right.
And then with our community partners, we've done many more. And I think it's just it's been an incredible team effort. And
Well, I
here we
never
are.
knew about that planning, but I know about it now, and I'm very glad.
Yeah.
So let's just do a really quick fast forward. How does that vision and those plans look now?
Well,
Kind of coming off of this incredible time.
Obviously, a lot of things had to be paused. I think the best example is you look at the budget that the manager proposed in February of 2020. And it's a little bit of a museum relic because literally he proposed this budget that had the largest ever investment in our school facilities, huge investments in waterfront flooding infrastructure, all kinds of long deferred projects, things that we really wanted to get going. And unfortunately, March rolls around and that budget became something that was not possible anymore, and so we went to budget 2.0, and that's
Right.
what we called it. And so I think there's a good kind of peek into some of the challenges that we had to put aside. But what I am proud of is there was a whole bunch of stuff that I think even some of our wildest dreams we couldn't have imagined we actually got done in this last 2 years. Landmark redevelopment is probably the biggest. That is something we've been talking about for 2 decades in the city.
Yep.
And in fact, the very first meeting I had with the partners who ultimately are going to make this project happen, Folger Pratt, the private developer, we had in March of 2020. And it was right at the end of the month. And I remember it being so jarring because we had been just in constant crisis mode since my birthday, March 11th, which is what I believe that was when the WHO declared the pandemic began. So since my birthday in March of 2020, we had been just in crisis, absolute crisis every day. And I get this invite from these folks from Folger Pratt, and they say, we want to talk, and we think we can help pull this together. And that started a year-long conversation that had ups and downs, and near-death experiences at several points. But we were finally able to get that pulled together, and now we're going to have land use approvals next month and the month following to really get this moving, and that's enormously exciting.
It is.
And we also made significant infrastructure investments. We've gotten the school of package back on track, which is good. Big investments in the storm sewers and sanitary sewers, and so I think we've been able to make progress on a lot of different things. There's certainly things that had we had 2.5 normal years, we would have accomplished that are aside, and I think some of those wait for another term, and I think that's part of what I'm talking about in this campaign.
All right. Well, circling back to the budget,
Sure.
and particularly talking about stormwater and sewage.
Yeah.
Of the $60 million that has been allotted to Alexandria from the American Rescue Plan, what would you anticipate? How much of that would you anticipate putting towards stormwater control?
We will see. I think part of the challenge is we need to figure out, because there's a deadline of when the money has to be spent.
Exactly.
So the money has to be spent by 2024. And so I think what we're doing two things right now. So one, we're going through the guidelines the Treasury Department put out. The Treasury Department put out well over 100 pages of guidelines that govern how we can spend that money. Because the federal law actually only had really 3 or 4 criteria that said this is what you can spend it on. The Department of Treasury took all that and turned it into 100 and some odd pages of rules and regulations. And so we're trying to understand that first. Then I think we need to figure out what's doable in that period of time. And so we're looking at all the projects that are out there and figuring out what can be accelerated, what could be applied to the different rules that Treasury Department has shown, and then what can be done. And so I would like to see a very large amount of that money used for basic infrastructure. I think that is a real opportunity for us. That's in the legislation, as sewers are mentioned as a specific item that is allowed to be used. The other thing that I think we have to figure out is we have a coordination opportunity here. So the state has a lot of money. Our school system has a lot of money. And I think we're going to work very closely with both the state and the schools to try to figure out the best way to get the bang for everyone's buck. Because the state's going to put some of that money into projects that benefit local governments, including Alexandria, and we're going to want to coordinate that and possibly spend money on some of those projects to make them more effective. Same thing with our schools. The schools have actually 2 pots of money that they've benefited from. They actually got rescue plan money, and then they got money from the bill that was passed right at the end of the Trump administration in December of 2020. The local governments didn't get money, but schools did. And so they have a lot of money too. And I think we're going to look at how we coordinate between the two and figure out what we can do. And it could be that in some cases we're able to supplant projects that were funded elsewhere or planned to be funded elsewhere and free up money for some projects that might happen after 2024. So I think we have to look at all that, look at our debt capacity, look at everything.
So does it literally have to be spent by the end of 2024 or can it be in the process of being spent? Like if you have a contract that has been signed and you're working, but it's paid in increments.
That is exactly what we are trying to understand in those regs.
Right.
We are reading through those regs. I've read part of them. I can't say I've gotten through all of them. They're dense, and we're all trying to understand. We have a number of folks in our staff who are going through that and trying to figure out exactly what is eligible.
Because that makes a big difference.
Makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And the other part of that, obviously, my focus is some of these infrastructure, some of these sustainable investments, things that are going to last generations. Because this is such a huge amount of money that we really have that opportunity. But we also need to continue some of the human supports that we used the CARES Act money for last year. So we need to make sure that we're still staving off evictions, so providing further emergency rent relief, the food assistance. We've seen about a 12 times the normal food assistance that we had prior to the pandemic. We're going to have to continue that for a little while, unfortunately. And then some of the small business assistance. It's small business assistance helps not only our small businesses stay afloat, but it also helps our employees and keep them employed. And so we're going to work to prioritize that money to keep our small businesses afloat as they get out of this. So
all right. As you are out and about, what are you hearing from city residents? What are their concerns? There are a couple of hot button issues that are floating around, but just kind of your everyday.
Yeah. So when I'm knocking on doors, which I've been doing a lot of these last several months, I am hearing certainly number one about the pandemic, and all kinds of different aspects of the pandemic. What's next? When are we gonna? When are these restrictions going away? What does that look like? How do we rebuild our economy? What does that look like? School questions, lots of school questions, and certainly as a parent of 2 ACPS students myself, that's on our mind as well. And so I think that's what I'm hearing most of when I'm going to doors. And I think that's not unexpected. And I also heard, it's been interesting, right? I go to every door wearing a mask, just to make sure folks, because it was at the beginning of this campaign, I was unclear. I've always knocked on doors. That's been the way I feel comfortable in a campaign, but I was unclear whether people would be comfortable with that. And it's, more often than not, I think it's a testament to the good work that our team has done this year. More often than not, when I get the doors, people say, oh, do you need me to wear a mask? Don't worry, I've been vaccinated. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
folks have been vaccinated. They appreciate the efforts that have been made. And again, to my earlier point, I think a lot of these people are saying, hey, how can I help? Even at doors. So I think that's certainly what I'm hearing. The normal things. School capacity, infrastructure concerns. Larger economic concerns, taxation. All of the kind of bread and butter of local government. Those are still issues I hear at doors. But I think number one obviously is pandemic. So.
Okay. Now, I say this with all
Yeah, please.
with all due respect, but it feels like in the past few months that you've become a rather polarizing figure.
Yeah, yeah.
People either they really have your back, they support you,
Yeah.
and they've got your signs in the yard,
Yeah.
or it's like, oh no,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
How do you balance those two things?
Yeah.
And is this the normal life in politics?
I think some of it's normal life in politics, for sure. I will say that again, I've been my first campaign was in 2007, and I've run 6 races, and it does seem like in the last several years our politics has gotten coarser, has gotten
Yes.
meaner, and I think I think it's easy and probably cliche to blame what went on over the river for part of that. And maybe that was a factor, but I also think something's happening here too, and it's one of my regrets that I haven't been able to kind of fix that. I wish I could fix that. I am, and I think even folks who are not fans of mine would say, I love the debate. I love discussing difficult issues. I love working through difficult issues. I love hearing people out and having these conversations and talking about these things, and I enjoy it. I think that's why I'm in this business, is to kind of work with the residents I have a privilege to represent, to try to deal with difficult issues. That doesn't always mean we're going to agree,
Yep.
and no question about it. And certainly, when you've been in elected office for 10 and a half years, like I have, there is probably everyone in this community has something that they don't agree with that I've done in that time, and I understand that, and I understand that for some people those issues are going to override anything else. But I try to be upfront with folks. I try to explain my perspective and where I'm coming from, and sometimes folks aren't going to like me for it, and
Yeah.
I try to do my best to at least make sure even the folks who greatly dislike me have my ear and can make sure that my decisions are informed by their perspective. So.
Yeah, I think that we've spent. I think just learning how to listen has been an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And accommodating other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about density.
Yeah.
I think many of us, certainly I have, come to a better understanding of the trickle-down effect of density and what it really means, from roads to construction to loss of green space, impermeable surfaces, etc. And really, my experience comes from living on Howell Avenue and having Potomac Yard
Yep.
and becoming a through street
Sure.
from way up Braddock Road
yeah.
all the way over. So
Yeah.
once you kind of understand that density doesn't just mean a building,
Yeah.
but it means all of these other things, you kind of start to question. So is there a real way to balance density and to make the city still work,
Yeah.
and to be the place that so many of us love?
Yep.
And can we ask more from our developers?
Yeah. Well, first of all, to your last question, absolutely, and I think that's certainly what we have been attempting to do over these last several years. We have significantly increased what we ask of developers as it relates to affordable housing. We have significantly increased what we ask of developers for contributions to the sanitary sewer system. We have significantly increased what we ask of developers to do on their properties from a stormwater perspective to handle stormwater. I think if you think about, Potomac Yard's a great example, right? So in Potomac Yard, you have a completely developer-funded sanitary sewer system under Potomac Yard. You have acres of parkland that was funded by the developer. You have 2 school sites that ultimately will come to fruition. One we might not use, one we will. You have a metro station that is primarily funded by a combination of the developers and the development that's occurring in Potomac Yard. And so I think Potomac Yard is probably a really good example of our efforts to try to capture as much value as we possibly can. There is a limit, and I think our goal at the city is where we have development occurring, which is near transportation infrastructure, near those kind of growth corridors of the city, we want to try to capture as much of that development to get amenities for the city, for the taxpayers, and not end up in a situation where the projects don't happen. And I think a perfect example is in Beauregard on the west end of the city. We approved back in 2012 a pretty significant land use plan there, a whole lot of density, lots of parkland, new transportation improvements, the largest affordable housing plan we have ever put in a development plan. And ultimately, the developer looked at it and decided, too expensive. Yeah. I'm not going to make any money off there, and they shelved it, and they shelved it all. And in fact, I met with some residents this afternoon concerned about some of the impacts of that existing housing that's still there that was not redeveloped, right. And it's because the developer is not willing to invest in it. And I think ultimately we laid out a too rich of a package for the taxpayers. Now, I think we try to get it, so we maximize what we get. But there's no question about it that there are quality of life impacts, and I think we have to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support growth, and we have to make sure that we put that infrastructure in place at the minimizing the impact on our taxpayers. Yeah. And that is certainly a balance all around our city. Yeah. Now, we also start off in Virginia as a state that is in Virginia law is very land rights friendly, and so as
a resident of Delray, I understand that perfectly.
Yeah, you know it as well as anybody. And I think the challenge is for the local government is, I tell people it's like in local government in Virginia we have all the carrots but none of the sticks. And so when it comes to development, we can provide incentives to landowners to do things we would like them to do or to build things that we would like them to build, but we ultimately can't stop them from building, in some cases, things we don't want them to build. Yeah. And that's the balance. And I think it is a difficult balance, and it's one that sometimes the community residents are not thrilled with where we strike that balance. But I think it's trying to both maximize that benefit as well as make sure that some of the things we don't want to happen don't happen, and it's avoiding a worse option. So
one of the things that struck me. Aside from the traffic with Potomac Yard, yeah. When back in the spring, early spring, I guess, it was one of the first times that people actually felt like they could go outside. Yeah. Trying to find even an inch of space on the bike paths. Yeah, and it was just amazing that green space had become such a tangible example of freedom, if you will. It That's was right. like That's right. I can get outside and I can go to this space in people's yards. Look at the fire pits and the yard parties, because it was like. Well,
and early in that point in the pandemic, some of our parks were really being abused.
Oh.
And so we were getting a lot of complaints because all of our residents had nothing else they could do. And so they were going to
Yes.
our parks, they were out in our parks, which was wonderful. And in fact, we even had, I know in some of the Old Town parks, we had a lot of folks coming over from Maryland to use them because they are available and they're great parks. And, Ben Brenman and on the West
Yeah.
End was heavily used. And we actually had to pick up, we had to expand some of the trash pickup and collection to keep those parks clean and help because they were getting abused. But again, good problem to have, right? People were out in our spaces and using them. And in fact, one of the things I've been talking about in this campaign is I feel like we have made some significant investments in school infrastructure to try to catch up. We've made some significant investments in sewer infrastructure to try to catch up, roads, bridges, some of the major infrastructure that we've been deferring for decades. We have made some really significant investments. The one area we have not dealt with, and I think we're going to have to figure out over the next couple of years, is around our parks and open space. And we have, I'll be candid. I think if you look around the region, our neighbors have in Arlington and Fairfax have just better parks and recreation facilities and centers and playgrounds and all that than we do. And I think we have great plans. You go to our city's Parks and Recreation page, you will see a large park plan, a pocket park plan, neighborhood park plan. We have some wonderful plans that we built with the community. Community members told us they want a playground here, they want a tennis court here, all that. We just don't have any money to implement any of them. And so I think part of the conversation over the next couple of years is how do we implement that?
Think about this. This is interesting. Without saying a word, the citizens told you what was important to you.
That's right. That's right. Oh, yes.
They just showed up.
They just showed up. And we have such great input in those processes. And they were, and I think they've given us a great map for a great roadmap for how we can implement that going forward. And I also think it's one of those things, every time we do surveys and we do polls, residents tell us that's usually the number one thing they're looking for. They want, community gardens always rank really high, playgrounds always rank really high. That's what folks are looking for out of their government. It's one of those things that's almost universal in the community.
Yeah.
So.
And they showed up. Yeah. I like that. All right, so let's just plunge right into Seminary Road.
Sure.
You've made your position very clear. You were very much in favor of the road diet. And you have said that you do not favor reversing it or making any kind of modifications.
Well, I'm not said that I wouldn't want to make any kind of modifications. Obviously, I think what we said at the beginning was, we're putting this in place. If we need to tweak it down the line, absolutely, I'd certainly be in favor of tweaking if we have challenges. My focus in that all along was making sure that we have pedestrian access throughout. That was a situation where we did not have a westbound sidewalk, and now we have a place for pedestrians to go, a shared space. And ultimately, the plan is to build a permanent sidewalk on that side using some of the seminary property. They've expressed a willingness to partner with us, and so ultimately that's the direction. And new pedestrian crossings across Seminary that make it safer for folks to get back and forth. We got two faith communities on either side there. Yep. We got schools, and we have a whole lot of residents. And I think my priority all along was pedestrians, and that's still where I'm at. So I think while I would never say like we can't tweak things in the future, I think just ripping out a whole bunch of pedestrian crossings and sidewalks and things like that's not something I'm in favor of. So,
in retrospect, do you think that the process could have been improved?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I said that at the time we voted. I think part of it was elongated in a point where folks on both sides felt like, they came, they provided input, and then we went away for a while. And then they came back and they didn't feel like their input was incorporated. And then we went away again. And I think we have done more intensive public engagement processes on other things in the city where we dedicate the staff, we dedicate we make sure everyone's kind of engaged in a process, and we tweak it. It's an iterative process. We get to a place, and then we get to a place where we're done and make a decision. And I think this one just took so long, and just during that period, just so much discord on both sides. And I mean, this is clearly a controversial decision, right? No question
Right.
about it. And obviously change of this kind, particularly when you have a scarce resource in this case, which is asphalt, scarce asphalt, it's always going to be difficult and always going to be a controversy in the community. And unfortunately, I think these complete streets projects all over the city have been at times controversial, much more than they probably should be. And so I think clearly if we're in that situation, then the process has failed and we got to do a better job. And so
I have been in one of the. I think Potomac Yard is a pretty good example because that was a very elongated process too.
Yes.
And my frustration, and I have seen the city do it differently, but my frustration was always that I didn't know if anybody was actually writing anything down.
Yeah.
So it became he said, she said,
Yeah.
and all you have to do is look at social media and know that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
soon becomes just irrelevant.
That's right. That's
because
right.
you can't remember anything.
Yep.
Now, I have been to other city meetings where people actually did take notes and
Sure.
things were recorded, and that made me feel a lot better.
Yeah, and one of the things I pushed for, and we actually did in the South Patrick Street planning process, which ultimately resulted in the heritage redevelopment, was kind of like the federal government does, where basically every input we receives a written response. And we're putting that out there and saying, okay, we heard 10 people say, the building should be blue, and here's what color, this is what blue looks like, and this is what we do, whatever. But I think that way that people can look in the documents, see their input, and see kind of how it's being considered and how it's incorporated in the final the final proposal. And I think that's what folks don't. They're not interested in everyone constantly agreeing with them, but they want to make sure that their time is valued.
Yes.
and that the input they provided is something that ultimately inform the product. And I mean, again, I've been in this for over a decade now, and as I said, I've made decisions that people like and make decisions that people don't like. And I think even when I disagree with you and I make a decision that that I know you don't like, I try to make sure that your input, if not all of it, some part of it, informs ultimately what we do. And I think that's got to be the goal of public, because we're not gonna agree all the time, and,
No.
and nor should we, nor should we.
That would be pretty boring.
Yeah.
So, going back, when you were talking about the development of Potomac Yard, you mentioned 2 school sites.
Yeah.
Now, just the other day, and where do I have my notes? Michael Pope actually posted something that several people responded to about, is it section 23
Yeah.
that shows co-location housing on school grounds?
Yeah. Well, there is in 23 in land in
And
that
where,
land, in that
and
land
where
bay.
Potomac Yard is that the
So-
north end?
Yeah, so if you're looking at the existing shopping center right
Right.
now, it's basically if you're facing the shopping center, it's to the right, closest to getting closer to Route 1. So not quite to Route 1, but getting closer.
But like
to Route
in the Target parking lot?
give or take.
Okay.
Give or take. Yeah, it's a little harder because I'm not looking at the land bay map, but yeah, and it's obviously it's going to change when that happens. But on that site, the way the land use plan that was approved several years ago had it is that the developer needs to accommodate part of their affordable housing obligations on that site, and then a portion of it is a school site. So I think the way the land use plan was laid out, it was intended to be next to each other. So an affordable housing building next to a school site. Now I think
But not technically on the same parcel of
not
land?
not on the same parcel of land. So
Okay.
I think one of the things that's been talked about is whether that is an opportunity on that site to do something like we did with the fire station farther up in
Okay.
Potomac Yard, where you would have potentially housing on top of some school building. I think a lot of that's going to need to depend on what school we ultimately decide to put there. I think ACPS hasn't yet made any decisions about
Okay.
what that's going to be. There had been some conversation about it possibly being part of their high school network. So maybe you would put the STEM Academy there, or the Health Sciences Academy, or some kind of discrete part of the high school network that ACPS is building now around the city. And that would give us options as far as housing is concerned that maybe you wouldn't have if you put an elementary school there or something like that. And so I think ultimately that's going to require a lot of dialogue with ACPS and figuring out what
Now,
to do.
was that plan put in place at before the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus was announced?
No, so that was put in place in response to
In
Virginia Tech.
response to, okay.
So what happened? So originally the school site in North Potomac Yard was actually in the far northeast corner of the movie theater parking lot,
Okay.
basically. And so that was the original plan. It was a smaller site. But when Virginia Tech was announced, we worked through, early in my term as mayor, we worked through the land use plans with Virginia Tech. They switched sites. Remember, they were originally
Yes,
planned for
Oakville
Oakville
Triangle,
Triangle.
and
They
then they
moved
moved
across
over, right.
Route 1. And it was decided that it would probably be better for Virginia Tech to take that entire corner.
Okay.
And instead, they provided a larger site. Actually, it's a larger
okay.
school site in Block 23 that is in a different spot. And so I think ACPS ultimately decided that was a better site for them too. So they were actually happier with that because the site that was originally proposed was a much smaller site and
Okay.
would have been a very urban style school and wouldn't have been a traditional school build. So this gives us some more opportunities there. And yeah, that was approved after Virginia Tech.
All right. Well, no, that's good. I like that, and I'm very excited about Virginia.
Yeah,
I
it's a big deal.
I think it's
It's a big opportunity for the city, and obviously just having all around the world, higher education institutions are economic engines, and so having Virginia Tech there is something that, quite honestly, as I tell people, like Amazon can go out of business in 10 years. I don't think they're going to,
I
but
agree
Amazon could go out of
completely.
business in 10 years. Virginia Tech will still be
I
there.
agree
We'll still be there.
completely.
Which is
I was
exciting.
much more excited
Yes.
about the Innovation Campus than I was Amazon. And people would go, "Well, what do you mean Virginia Tech?" I said,
Yeah.
"You got to read the.
Oh, it's very exciting.
You have to.
It's
you
a
have
big
to-
step for this community,
Yeah.
and it's already. I mean, obviously the Boeing investment was huge that they announced a couple of days ago, and I think that's just the beginning. I have heard from a number of corporate executives from major employers in this region who have reached out saying, "Hey, can you get me in with Virginia Tech? I need to get in with Virginia Tech," and they want to get in with Virginia Tech because they want to be in line for the talent that is going to be
Right.
coming out of that. And if you think about why Amazon located here and why Virginia Tech was part of it, it was all about talent. It was about where in the country could they get that kind of talent pipeline that they would need in the future. And it's not just for Amazon. It's for everyone else as well. And so I think all these other major employers are saying, "Gosh, we want to get in that line." And that's great. That's the kind of partnerships we want.
It is. It's great, and the fact that Inova is opening an emergency medical 24-hour
Yeah.
clinic
Yeah,
in
HealthPlex.
Oakville
Yep.
Triangle.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
We were. I think there was a little bit of a brief mourning when Virginia Tech moved out of Oakville and across the way, but I think because we were excited about finally getting Oakville moving, but in many ways having the HealthPlex and the related development that's going to go along there, I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, and
so
that's a great symbiotic.
we need it. I mean, obviously
relationship.
Inova, not only what they're doing at Landmark with the new hospital, but also the HealthPlex here. They're making some significant investments in our community, which is great.
Yeah, I want to get to questions in just a minute, but I did want to go back to you were talking about small businesses and the American
sure.
Rescue Plan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed it, but the Zebra just posted tonight that the proprietors of the new establishment in Old Town, where King Street Blues used to be,
Yeah,
it's going to be the Old Hat Bar.
Okay,
They've
yeah.
delayed their opening because they can't find workers.
Major issue. Yeah, I talk to business owners. In fact, 2 of them yesterday. Every day I talk to business owners who are struggling to find employees.
And I look at Old Town. Our office is right at 310 King Street, and I come out every day in the streets. Oh my God, the buses showed up again today with school tours,
Yes,
and it's
yes.
everybody's coming to Alexandria
Yep.
for the summer.
Yep.
And I'm, where
We need talent.
Yeah.
We need people. No, it's
the restaurants are struggling.
It's a big challenge, and I think it's going to inhibit our recovery, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you have restaurants that are now poised to finally grow for the first time in a year and a half, and other hospitality, not just restaurants, but other hospitality businesses, and the inability to find staff, to find people willing to work for them is a real challenge right now.
But then it goes back to that infrastructure issue of childcare
Yes,
and of
yes.
transportation, and
it's-
nothing is a silo.
It's so many different things. I mean, I think more often than not, I hear about the affordability challenges, and particularly in a region like this, you have residents who they can't afford to live in Alexandria as it is.
Yes.
So if they can find a job in Prince William or Loudoun where they can afford to live, or
That's really gonna be.
in Prince George's, Charles County, in Maryland, wherever, that's where they're going to be. They're going to work there because they can make the same amount of money, give or take, and they don't have to travel. They don't have to commute the way there is, and they're closer to their family and closer to daycare and closer to everything else. And so, it is a real challenge, and I think it's why one of the most important issues we have to work through as a community is how we create the housing supply necessary to support our economy. Yeah. And I think it's a couple years ago, the Council of Governments' number one issue for the year was housing supply for the region. And one of the things that drove that was a coalition of some of the biggest employers in the region coming to the Council of Governments and saying, this is an inhibitor. This is an inhibitor of growth. This is the inability of our employees to find housing in this region, to find affordable housing, is making it so we cannot grow as employers. And I think that is something we see here in Alexandria, and that's something we see all over the region. And I think creating the housing supply necessary to accommodate that has got to be a number.
Well, that's actually one of the questions that has come in from one of our viewers. Why isn't Virginia Tech building affordable housing on their campus?
So there is affordable housing in North Potomac Yard as part of that plan, and that was actually on the Block 23. And we're still having conversations about ultimately how all that's going to lay out. But housing is part of that. Also, part of the Amazon Virginia Tech package that was put together from the state was actually new state funds to create affordable housing in the impacted communities. So that's in Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, but then also some of the outer suburbs. And so we're actually working right now to apply those monies to affordable housing projects in this area right now.
3 other quick questions.
Yeah, sure.
Any update on Dr. Herring's resignation?
I have not heard anything about it. He
just a personal.
Yeah, he had some. He wanted a different pace of life, and he was obviously so instrumental in the success we had in this last year, and it was shocking to lose him, and we miss him dearly. It came as
a surprise.
It definitely came as a surprise, but I think the foundation that he put in place, which was kind of equity-focused public health, is something that's benefiting us right now, every day. And the fact is, our vaccination average is one of the best in the state, and I think that was the foundation that he set up. And so while we certainly miss him, we're still benefiting from his leadership today.
ADUs.
Yeah.
I saw a crazy email on this earlier today, but what is council's current policy on ADUs?
So City Council earlier this year approved an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And this is we had not had one in place before. And so we just approved it. And so basically what this allows is 2 different types of what we would call accessory dwelling units. So first, it is what I would call like an internal accessory dwelling unit. And this is in an existing structure, allowing another dwelling unit in an existing structure. So in a single family home, allowing someone to live in the basement, basically, legally. Right now, this happens, as you know, illegally all over the community.
But does it mean technically that you could I know you could build a unit. You're just not supposed to say have another stove down there.
Yeah, now you can. Now you can potentially do that. So, the key characteristic of our single family zoning is you can have one front door on those properties, and so now you could have 2 front doors.
2 front doors.
So that's the internal ADU. The one that's probably more controversial is an external ADU, and essentially what we said is basically you can build what you could already build as far as sheds or garages. You could just now have someone live in it. So basically, we haven't allowed you to build anything you really weren't able to build before. But now someone could potentially live in it. And that's essentially what we approved. We did, due to a lot of community input, we did prohibit the ability to make those Airbnbs or other short-term rentals. So we prohibited that and put some other regulations to try to address setback and things like that, so that they wouldn't be obtrusive to neighbors. Our friends in Arlington had adopted an ADU ordinance about a decade ago, and they saw like 9 built over a decade.
Interesting.
Now they have since loosened their ordinance a little bit. They probably went overly restrictive when they did it, and that's probably why they saw so few. But ultimately ADUs are a niche solution. They fit certain needs, but not a lot of needs. Like, not everyone's going to build ADUs.
Right.
They're very good for some of the intergenerational living opportunities where you have aging seniors that can live with their kids, but not be in the same home, or disabled children who can't be completely on their own but want that independent living.
Okay.
So I mean, there's some good use cases there like that, and then just an opportunity for additional housing stock in some cases. So.
Okay. All right. One more question. You continue to speak about teacher housing on school grounds.
Yeah.
If you spend public funding on affordable housing, how can you set it aside for a particular class of workers?
Yeah. So again, I think the only one we've been talking about, what we were talking about earlier, Potomac Yard, we haven't even gotten that far.
Okay.
It's not anywhere near to the point where we would actually talk about how we would administer it or anything like that. Depending on how you finance affordable housing on the city, you have different rules. So most of the affordable housing we build in the city is funded by low-income housing tax credits, a federal program. And so there are a set of rules, and you have to allow anybody who incomes qualifies to live in that housing. I think if we financed it differently, you could set different rules. It kind of depends on what ultimately we would decide to do. So again, that's assuming that we ever did it. At the fire station at Potomac Yard, which is in place. Those are, I believe, 65, don't quote me on that number, 65 units, and those were LIHTC funded. Those were low-income housing tax credit funded. And so those fit all the normal federal profiles. So as long as you meet the income guidelines, that's where you live.
Are those guidelines, and somebody said to me the other night in one of our interviews that they had a friend, I don't know, in what profession he was in, but his salary was $500 above the limit to live there.
Yeah.
Are those ever adjusted?
Yeah, so every year the feds adjust. It's Housing and Urban Development HUD, federal HUD, every year comes out with a table for each area that says, these are the income limits. And it's basically when we develop affordable housing, we're aiming it toward a certain area median income, certain percentage of area median income. So from the low end, 0 to 30% of area median income, to what we would call workforce housing, which is 50, 60, 70% of area median income. And, if it's a 60% unit, you can make up to 60% of the area median income for your household size. So it's a different limit based on, if you're one person in the house, it's different if you have 4 people in the house.
Right.
And so if they're $500 over, the federal rules apply. So we can't let folks in. But that's generally the way the feds require it. Now, since they're financing a big chunk of it, we have to follow those rules.
Okay. It's interesting because I think that in real estate, I think that the VA is one of the few federal agencies that really pays attention to the cost of living.
Yes.
Because the ability to get a VA loan here in the Northern Virginia area, I mean, and what you can get with a VA loan is significant.
Sure.
Because they realize,
Oh, yeah. And it is, I mean, the good news is we're looking, when we do affordable housing development in the city, we're looking at the area median income here. So we're able to look at the factors that are here. And I mean, most people would look at like a 60% AMI and say, well, that's a significant income, but that is, 60 AMI is teachers, it's firefighters, it's police officers in this region. And so, that tends to be where we're aiming a lot of these things at.
Okay.
So.
Well, okay, one more question,
Yeah, sure.
and then we have just been moving along
Yeah,
here.
I'm happy to.
Please elaborate on your views of systemic racism and white supremacy as it relates to housing.
Yeah, absolutely. This will take a while. This is a difficult issue. I think we've all in the last year had an opportunity to step back and kind of look at I've heard others describe it as a dual pandemic we've dealt with. Not only the public health pandemic, but the racial reckoning that is long overdue in our community. And I think, in many ways they connect because what we saw in this last year was we saw this virus not hit our community equally. And it didn't hit our community equally, not because the virus is racist, but because we have deep-seated inequities in our community that existed long before the virus, as it relates to public health, as it relates to educational, wealth attainment, housing, et cetera.
Absolutely.
And so specific to housing, I think if you look at our community today and you overlay the city's zoning map on top of the city's demographic map, there is a lot of overlap. There is a lot of consistency in those maps, and that's not an accident. You know, and it is in many ways it is a system working exactly as it was intended a long time ago. That's not to mean that that the folks who continue to approve zoning restrictions, which I do regularly, have a racist intent. But it has served
Yes.
it has served to separate our community in some ways. And so I think one of the conversations we need to have as a community is looking at the disparate impact of some of these systems, and zoning is just one of many systems that have a disparate impact on our population in the city. And I think, we have had a zoning for housing effort underway for a couple of years, looking at our zoning code kind of piecemeal and trying to figure out how we can introduce more equity into our zoning code and try to ameliorate some of these inequities that exist. But this is a very difficult conversation. It's one that there's no silver bullet. There's no easy answer. It's going to require a reimagining of some of the systems that have served us for generations in our community.
And I think that you really do have to go back and understand the history and how VA loans originated
That's
and
right.
how the federal government, let's face it, was absolutely culpable
Yes.
in making racial restrictions around housing.
Absolutely. And it happened here in the city of Alexandria.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, anybody who hasn't read Professor Rothstein's The Color of Law, I strongly encourage them to do it. And they will think about this stuff very, very differently. And, I've had the opportunity, there's been some great folks in our community who've been doing a lot of research on this, the history in Alexandria, looking at the VA maps and looking at the insurance maps and how they were used to decide what properties were insurable or not. And then looking at, I've had residents show me the restricted covenances that in some cases are still recorded on properties in the city of Alexandria that regulated, and you're talking about ADUs, regulated lot size, regulated structure size, but also regulated the race of the people that live there. And those were all tied together. Those were not accidental. And I think, a lot of those restrictions and a lot of that policy has good intent today. And we have come to believe and come to ascribe better intent to it today. But I think we do have to step back sometimes and look at the history and determine whether that impact is something we want to continue to perpetuate.
Well, Del Rey's a great example of redlining and restrictions. And yeah, right down there. All right, we have one more question, folks, because we all need to finish this up. Okay. More building doesn't make housing affordable. Higher wages do. What is the plan to attract higher paying, non-degreed jobs to Alexandria? Hospitality jobs will never provide adequate income to meet the cost of living in Alexandria.
Yeah, that is certainly a good question. So I think obviously the city has worked. I mean, Virginia Tech is a perfect example. The city has worked to attract commercial investment in the city, particularly in our transit corridors, to help drive job creation. And so the reason we're building a metro station at Potomac Yard, which opens in a year, is to drive office development in Potomac Yard, to drive that commercial growth. And I think that's to create the kind of jobs that I think the questioner was describing. We also have to make sure that we have the workforce that is available for those careers. And so this is why a lot of the investments we're talking about around workforce development. And I think one of the things we're going to be doing with some of those rescue plan dollars is focusing on workforce development and what types of kind of certifications, non-college certifications, can we get some of our residents who can immediately lead to a career path that is much more lucrative than, say, some of those hospitality industries.
When I was in high school, you were either on the college course or you were VOTEC.
Yeah,
and everybody looked down their nose at VOTEC because it was like dead end.
Yep.
Well, I have to tell you, I wish I had taken some VOTEC courses so I knew what to do with a drill or a hammer. And as a friend of mine said to me one time, there's nothing to say that you can't be an air conditioning repair person and not go to the opera at the Kennedy Center.
That's right. That's right. And those jobs cannot be outsourced.
That's right.
They
That's
cannot be
right.
outsourced. And I mean, listen, some of my high school classmates who have gone on to the greatest success are folks who have gone into a lot of those BMW auto mechanic I went to high school with is making great money. And I think there is a lot of opportunities for our students in those fields. And and I think the Virginia Tech campus presents some opportunities of partnership with our schools, not just at the highest tech, the highest educational tech, but at other areas as well. And so I think that workforce development area is going to be really key for us. Just before COVID, we actually had a joint meeting with our friends in Arlington County, with the Arlington County Board, talking about how we were going to make sure that the Virginia Tech Amazon investments benefited our entire community. And to a point, all of the 5 members of the Arlington Board and 7 members of the Alexandria Council were all very focused on workforce development. Good. That was the place where I think we all felt like we could make the biggest impact and equip our residents to benefit from the growth in this region. And so we absolutely are focused on where that question is coming from.
Good. That's nice to hear. Well, folks, we have gone for 55 minutes, almost nonstop. Justin, thank you so much for being here. And I will say to you what I have said to everybody. I thank you for putting yourself out there. It's not always easy, but anybody who is willing to stand for public service, my hat is off to them. The City of Alexandria appreciates it, and it makes all of us have a better life.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the great questions.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you. Folks, please come back tomorrow night when we will be talking to Allison Silverberg. Until then, thank you to our producer, David McClure. Our intern is not with us tonight. And as always, to Mary Wadland, our publisher and brilliant mind who makes all of this possible. See you tomorrow night.